Hey guys, it's Paradise, and I want to have an honest chat about Monster Hunter Wilds. Because right now the conversations around the game are getting interesting and sparking debates amongst the community, with overwhelmingly negative reviews on Steam, complaints about the performance, endgame burnout, etc. But the truth is a bit more nuanced. The core of Monster Hunter is enjoyable, it just has problems. A lot of these issues were even called out in our initial review for Wilds, with the performance, the streamlining, and the endgame being major issues for the community. So today we're going to talk about exactly what's working, what's not, and the state of the game. So let's get into it. We'll start with the foundation. The combat of Monster Hunter Wilds is really fun. The combat feels really satisfying, the monsters look mostly pretty good, and the moment-to-moment gameplay once you're squared up to a monster is solid. For the most part, if you boot up the game, slap on a weapon and armor set and go out hunting, it can be a good time, and that shouldn't be forgotten. But it's everything around this core of hunting, which is where the cracks really start to show. And it's a real shame because at the same time, they could all be issues that get fixed with enough attention from the developers. This is why feedback and community insights are so important for games, and Wilds is a perfect example. First and foremost, let's talk about performance. This has been one of the biggest complaints since launch, and for good reason. The game still runs poorly for a lot of players, even though it's been nearly a year since our initial first time playing at the gameplay reveal back in Gamescom of 2024, where we made these performance issues known through videos. Even now, there's stuttering, frame drops, and inconsistent performance that is holding back what should be an otherwise good experience. I also think the fact that much of the game doesn't look as visually spectacular as you would expect for something with these kind of performance issues doesn't help with the perception of the game. Now, the devs have commented on performance and do strive to improve it with each title update, but it has been a point of contention that doesn't seem to have been addressed with the same urgency as, say, the weapon balancing patches, which added sweeping changes, buffs, and nerfs, even entirely new moves to weapons. They did such a good job with these weapon balance changes and patches that it's honestly disappointing that the performance feels more like an afterthought. But we can see the devs are putting in a lot of work, just maybe in the wrong places. Credit is deserved where it's due, as Capcom were very fast and thorough in adjusting the weapon's damage and balance issues. The level of responsiveness to community feedback on that front was great to see, and it shows they really do care about the community. But why hasn't that same energy been applied to the performance? Because that is what is stopping a lot of people from even wanting to play. Then you've got the endgame, which has seen a major overhaul to past titles, and it's a bit of a double-edged sword. On one hand, the streamlining of things is fantastic. You get guaranteed gem drops through investigations, which is a massive quality of life improvement. You can fast travel, auto path, there's better UI, smoother systems, and it all makes the game easier to just jump in and play and have fun. But at the same time, this streamlining has come with a cost of long-term depth. The grind is shorter, and the challenge curve flattens out faster because you don't need to work as hard to get your best gear anymore. Now, this is really good for some, but for others it removes a key part of the satisfaction of the gameplay loop. It feels like the game is over just as you're getting into your groove in the endgame. But now we do have to be fair and remember this is a base game Monster Hunter title. If you've played past Monster Hunter games, and I know many of you have, then you know that the real grind and challenge tends to come with the first major expansion, which is traditionally known as G rank or Master rank. So it's not surprising that Wilds doesn't have that long-lasting pull just yet after you finish the story and sort out your armor sets. The problem is, many players are now expecting that G rank depth up front, and without it, they bounce off after a few dozen hours of grinding their sets and weapons. So some of this is likely due to player expectations not being in line with what a base game version of Monster Hunter actually is, while at the same time, Capcom should by now be aware of this and have designed the game in some fashion to manage this expectation. So in some way, I think both parties are kind of at fault here. We also need to talk about difficulty, as this is another point of concern for many, and it's an interesting topic. There's a real point to be made about difficulty in relation to your first Monster Hunter game and then subsequent ones. For example, in your first Monster Hunter game, it will always have been a harder, more challenging, and more rewarding experience because of that. Learning the flow of the core Monster Hunter gameplay loop, getting your butt kicked, learning from that and improving, Getting good at a weapon until you're comfortable to hunt with it is a real part of what Monster Hunter is about. But once you've done this in a past title, follow-up Monster Hunter games will not have that same experience because the core gameplay is still there, with the core weapons that you're used to. So I always try to bear this in mind when judging a new Monster Hunter game's difficulty. But with that being said, right now it feels like the endgame approach to difficulty is pretty one-noted. They seem to just increase the monster's health pool and increase their damage output, and maybe give them one new move or mechanic. It doesn't feel like there's enough creativity in how the monsters are evolving over time. Yes, arc-tempered monsters do exist and they do get a few new moves, but it doesn't feel like enough. It's not pushing players to actually change their strategy. I think the arc-tempered monsters' new moves should have been the difficulty of the game as a standard at launch, especially since they are apex monsters anyway. Then the arc-tempered versions should have massively dialed them up with even more new mechanics and moves to keep you on your toes. For example, think about Zoshia once they finally added a farmable version into the game. It brought a fresh experience with unique movesets, mechanics, and a reason to relearn how to hunt to tackle that specific monster. We need more of that, but applied across the board with the same level of rewarding weapons and armor. For example, I believe the stats were around 50% of players that failed on their first Zoshia attempt, versus 80% of players that didn't fail on their first attempt at the newly introduced endgame arc-tempered monsters. So you can see there's a stark difference in the difficulty when you compare these different approaches. Now we do have new content that's constantly rolling out in the title update roadmap, and while some of it is promising, it's a bit too spread out to keep people constantly engaged. You pop in, try the new arc-tempered monster or attend the festival, and then that's kind of it, you're done in a day or two. There's no reason to check in daily or weekly, so a tighter cadence of content drops would go a long way here and keep people engaged and happy with the content of the game. One recent highlight has absolutely been the returning monsters though, such as Arekkz, an amazing addition. We loved it and it's probably the most excited I've been with Wilds since the actual launch of the game. But again, that excitement only lasts so long, especially when it's a monster that many of us have fought before, and consider that the higher star versions and tempered versions are random occurrences on your map. It's not exactly the best flow for updates, where you need to rest spam to get a brand new monster to appear in different versions. Capcom could just easily add in more event quests when an update drops for a new monster, or additional optional quests with the other versions of that monster alongside the easy story one. I also think it would be better if returning monsters were paired with brand new Wilds exclusive monsters to keep that sense of wonder going. This way you would get a mix of nostalgia and a brand new surprise that would really get people logging back in. Imagine having Laggy added into the game alongside something completely different. We do have to give credit where it is due though, as some areas in the game are really well done. Some of the new skills that were brought in are fun and thoughtfully designed, shaking up builds in interesting ways, and you can see the team put a lot of effort into them. Some of the side content is also genuinely fantastic. Stuff like the barrel bowling minigame or the diva performances are surprisingly charming. There's real personality and care put into them, and if that same level of polish was put into the endgame or performance issues, then we'd be looking at a very different reception right now. So where does this leave us? Well, Monster Hunter Wilds is a good game, it really is. Hunting monsters is fun, the weapons feel great, and the content that is there is enjoyable, and the vision that they're trying for is clear. But it still has major issues, and the community response has made that obvious. Performance must be fixed. The endgame needs more creativity and depth, and the cadence of updates needs to be more engaging if Capcom wants to keep players hooked. The foundation is all here, they've proven they can respond to feedback, so it's just a matter of where they go from here. Remember, the future is bright for Monster Hunter fans as a whole, with new title update content dropping. There's even new Monster Hunter games on the horizon with things like Monster Hunter Outlanders that has a lot of people excited, and we're hopeful that the performance issues will be fixed, especially since Capcom are definitely aware that it needs fixing. So hopefully, given a little more time, Wilds and the Monster Hunter franchise will be back to where the community wants it to be as a top-tier gaming experience. So let us know in the comments, are you still playing Wilds now? Did you already bounce off, or are you holding out for the big expansion that's got to come at some point in the future? Tell us down below and what you think about all of this. Here at Arekkz Gaming, we're two friends who love to play games. You have me, Paradise, as well as 26.
Our goal is to keep the videos as concise as possible by cutting out any of the fluff and focusing on what really matters with high quality videos.
So make sure you're subscribed down below for more videos on your favorite games coming very, very soon.